Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to start today's proceeding with a dua, so I'm requesting that everybody please get settled and let's observe silence. I'm calling on Hussein Kala, who will give us the dua. Thank you, Hussein. Dada, Chairman of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Harun Kareem, the VP of Africa Chapter, Harun Joseph, our distinguished guest, Mr. Trevor Manuel, Mrs. Maria Ramos, trustees, patrons, members, friends, and families of the WMO. It is indeed a great pleasure to welcome you here today. It's so good to see so many familiar faces as well. 2 years ago, WMO International was hosted by us at the Centon, and at that meeting, there were many decisions taken, many resolutions passed, and at that time, a lot of us felt that we would not be able to achieve all that we're trying to get done. But through the grace of Almighty Allah and through the leadership of Mr. Solly Noor and his EXCO, we have managed to change WMO into a truly global organization. It was a daunting task at that time, but the results have really come in a short space of time. And today, WMO is a global player. It has total transparency, and it complies with corporate governance and also abides by the laws of the relevant countries, host countries in which it operates. We have 7 chapters: the Africa, India, Pakistan, Middle East, Far East, America, and Europe. And all this falls under the leadership of Mr. Solly Noor, being the president of WMO. To just give you one example of the confidence people have in WMO, I'd like to share a gesture that took place last year at our AGM in Sri Lanka. This left us all in awe. An astute businessman, running a manufacturing company, employing over 80,000 people, stood up and announced that he would donate $1 million there and there towards the education program implemented by WMO. This is but one individual of several who support WMO in their endeavors. This is the confidence we have, and this is the confidence W has created throughout the world. We as Mormons are blessed to be blessed with success in religion and wealth, which in turn gives us an opportunity to use these blessings for the betterment of those who are in need. Today, we are here to share with you some of the activities, achievements, and strides made by WMO in lifting the lives of those who are less fortunate than ourselves. I would like to call on the Vice President of the Africa Chapter, Harun Joseph, to address you.
Thank you, Harun. My speech is rather long, so please bear with me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. In the name of Almighty Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, it gives me great honor to welcome the WMO President, Brother Solih Noor, the past President, Brother Abdul Sattar Dada, and our honorable guest of honor, Mr. Trevor Manuel, and his wife, Mario Ramos Manuel, Brother Harun Karim from Dubai, Dania Hanif and her parents from Karachi, Pakistan. I also would like to extend a warm welcome to all gathered here today and acknowledge the presence of all trustees, life members, youth, and friends of WMO. We are particularly overwhelmed to have Mr. Trevor Manuel in our midst. We salute him and acknowledge the great role he played in the struggle against apartheid through his crucial presence and roles at the UDF and the ANC. We are today the beneficiaries of a democratic society because of the selfless contributions of the people of the caliber of Mr. Trevor Manuel. Our objectives in hosting today's gathering is to provide feedback on the role of WMO and to ensure that we are able to grow our mandate to meet the ever-increasing need to elevate poverty and to resolve any problems faced by the Mormon community and Muslims at large, be it economic, social, cultural, or even medical, anything to protect and maintain the dignity of the Mormon people. We have a worldwide community of generous donors and report that our zakat receipts are distributed in full each year without deducting any administration costs whatsoever. We all here know the importance of zakat. It is stated in Bukhari, and I quote, Allah has made the Muslim duty-bound to pay zakat. It will be realized from the wealthy to be distributed amongst the needy. I unquote. I humbly appeal to all our brothers, sisters, and youth, join this wonderful organization and make a difference. Finally, I must record that WMO allows one the opportunity to interact and network with our communities throughout the world. I wish to thank all members of the Board of Management who have made a concerted effort in encouraging a whole lot of new members in the past few weeks. A very big welcome to all our new members on board. I shall call them out those that have just joined very recently: Dr. Abdul Aziz Joseph, Mr. Ridwan Joseph, Khatija Suleiman, Tahira Hassam, Anwar Karim, Ashraf Dada, Abdul Rahim Bawa, Hanif Dosani, Usman Ahmed Khamisa, Harun Noor Muhammad, Farzana Muhammad, Tasneem Muhammad, Zunaid Ayob, Khalil Sabdia, Tariq Sabdia, Wamli, Mr. Ibrahim Musa, Rishad Qasim, Piazza Abu, Muhammad Joseph, my son, and Firoza Essa, my sister. In conclusion, on behalf of WMO Africa Chapter, I thank you all for honoring us with your presence Please enjoy the rest of the afternoon with us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Harun Joseph. As he mentioned, we are on a drive to increase our membership. And the saying goes, there's never a free lunch. So we've invited you here tonight, this afternoon, to look at the activities and help us make a difference for those less fortunate. So we appeal to all of you, join us, become members, and we've got people at the back if you need to know anything further. We'll have a short break. We will serve starters. We'll serve the starters sweets now, and then we will continue with the program. We'd like to keep on time with everything. Just, can you hear the back? I know there was a complaint you couldn't hear the back. Is it better now? Can't. You can't hear. Can the people at the back hear it? Okay. We'll serve the starters and we'll get the sound sorted out. Tell me, is that better? No. All right,
See, that you can talk like this. You see?
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to start our program again. Can we please settle down? And can you hear the back? Kashifa, can you hear the back? Okay. They can hear. Can we please settle down? It gives me great pleasure to call on the President of WMO, Mr. Solly Noor. He will be addressing us now, and at the end of his address, he will introduce our special guest, Mr. Trevor Manuel. It gives me great pleasure to call on Mr. Solly Noor.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Harun Gatta, our Honorable ex-Minister of many ministries, Trevor Manuel, and his beautiful wife, Maria Ramos, our ex-President, Mr. Sattar Dada, our Chairman of the Board of Trustees globally, Mr. Harun Karim, the Vice President of Africa, Mr. Harun Joseph and Shaida, and our member from the Youth League internationally, Dania Khanif, all the trustees, all the patrons, all the life members, and all the members of WMO, honorable ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, it's really an honor for me to have you all here today and to address you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning. Aj pa bo raji yu ke pa bade bhera thia yu ne hane pa bhera thi ne kam karu ke panja garibe ne inya pan dunya me wadan. Sorry, Trevor, all I was saying in our Kutch language is that we are truly honored today that we have so many brothers and sisters that are with us, and with them we work together for the betterment of those that need us most. But you know, when you end up here and you've prepared something, and then you get the Vice President of Africa that takes the wind out of everything that I wanted to say, then you get the Secretary General that adds punishment further, that takes the rest, then you know that now I have very little to say, so I'm going to change my entire topic. And I'm going to just tell you what I feel, and I hope you accept it because the prepared speech is now out of the game. I'm going to go back because our Honorable Minister raised it and a few others raised it with me this morning. And they wanted to know the beginning, where, what, why. So I'm going to go back to an article that was in The Economist last year, December, which spoke of the genius and the jewels of Gujarat, and went on with a subhead to say, living globally, the hidden secret of the best businessmen. So I'm going to use that as my pretext to address you, because it directly affects the Memon community. As you all know, Gujarat is a state in India which is bordered on one side by Pakistan, and on the other side we have the bustling city of Bombay. But Gujarat also has a unique thing where it has 20% of the coastline of India. And while it's the 20% coastline of India, living and being in the Arabian Sea, this was the place of choice from the 10th century for Persians and all the Arabic states to coming in to buy their wares, whether it was silkware or whatever was to be sold from Gujarat. And now you'll understand why there was an influence of the Islamic religion in the state of Gujarat. This was the beginning. At the same time, Gujarat today has not differed much. It employs 5% of the total employed in India, but is 22% of the entire exports of India. Gujarat is a state where a lot of things happened and a lot of things changed. So when we come back to the late 19th century, the main people or the main players in Gujarat were the Patadis, today known as the Patels. And out of this, around 1860, 1870, there was a group of people that converted to Islam. And those were the three different groups that took on Islam. It was the Bohras, the Khojas, which we know as the Ismailis today under the Aga Khan, and of course the Memon. That's where the Memon history in Gujarat really comes and begins. But while the Union flag was flying across the globe, and as the imperialists do, and trying to take over countries globally, there was an open door for those living in India to become the laborers, whether it was in the rice fields or whether it was in the sugarcane plants or even on the railways. And a lot of the people from Gujarat, nothing stopped them, because at that time there was grave famine and it was infested with cholera. And our forefathers thought that we have to seek greener pastures. Nothing stopped them. It was not the distance, neither was it the weather, but they had to go. And when you listen to how the people left Gujarat with absolutely nothing in their pockets, and thanks to them, we are today enjoying what we got. But it was very simple. They just went and they traveled globally. A lot of them went to New Zealand. A lot of them went to Fiji. A lot of them went to Burma. They crossed the barrier into Canada, Britain. But the majority who you see here today ended up in Africa, in East Africa and Southern Africa. From young, they knew one thing. The only thing we know that's best is to open a shop and do business. Whether it was on the railway stations, wherever it was, that's what happened. And they also knew that while we do this, we must make sure that we bring more of our people back. That is why you will understand why India, up to today, by FIFA, has been banned from the World Cup. Because whenever there was a corner, the Indians opened a cafe. So anyway, that might be the case. But the success of that was hard work. And if I tell you what the jewels of Gujarat have achieved, in the United States today, 30% of all hotels and motels are owned from people of Gujarat. 50% of all the pharmacies, independent pharmacies in the United States and Canada are owned from the people of Gujarat. If you go to Britain, it's the same story. The largest independent pharmaceutical group, Day Lewis, it's also owned from the people of Gujarat. Gujarat today, in present day, has got the three richest people in India, Mukesh Ambani, you got our Dilip Shangvi, and of course, our Mr. Azim Premji, the king of high-tech. Today, those are the richest people. But besides that, Mahatma Gandhi, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and our Modi today are all Gujaratis. So you can see the influence of Gujaratis globally. But when it came to the Memons, which I'm going to concentrate today, and most of them that came to East Africa, came to South Africa, they worked very hard and they did what they had to do. But for some of them that lived in Uganda, some of them that lived in Burma, if you take Burma for instance, which had a huge Memon population, the king of rice at that time was Mr. I think it was Akbar Jamal, Muhammad Karim Jamal. In 1920, the Queen had already knighted him. But in 1962, when the generals took over, they nationalized everything. And thousands had to flee for their life back to Gujarat or across the border in Pakistan. And a lot of those were Memon. The same thing happened in Uganda. After building up a huge part of Uganda, the Asian community in Uganda at that stage, though they were 100,000 of a population of 8 million, they totally ran the economy, they were an asset to the society, and they were 20% of the entire GDP of Uganda. But it took a madman like Idi Amin to make sure that they were all removed instantly and moved. Most of them went to Britain and a lot of them went to Canada. But today, those are all entrepreneurs. Just one quick example of how it worked in those days. One young man, he was only 17. He had to leave Uganda with no parents, with nothing. He had 10 pounds in his pocket. At that time was $16. Ended up in London looking for lodging, and nobody would take a non-white lodger. Finally, an Irish family took him in Kilburn, and he went to work at 25 pence an hour. But he worked so hard that the Wimpy people told him, please bring us more of your people, more of your people. 3 years later, he went and he bought his own shop. But he had a post office with it, so he knew, now my expenses are covered with what I'm going to get from the post office. A few years later, he bought his own house in Wembley. And when the rest of the Ugandans came, 25 of them were housed in his home. And hundreds after they were looked after him. The rest is history. Today he's known as Lord Dollar. He's been awarded the peerage and he's worth 700 million pounds. He came with nothing. Those are some of the stories what the people have gone through. But let's look at the ones now that came to East Africa and were moved away. Finally, Uganda asked them to come back and they once again got the economy running. But in South Africa, we were very blessed. Our parents came here, worked very hard, and the Memon community just stands out in whatever they do. They are the silent business people of the year. Please, no relation to the Guptas. Let's make it straightforward and upfront, you know. And they've been highly successful in every field. WMO is very proud to have those as our senior members. Right here in Pretoria, we have the MCA group. That is the largest single toiletry group in the whole of Africa. They have a factory now with 50,000 square meters employing 3,000 to 5,000 people. They export globally. And if you want to know who they are, they're below the radar, you don't hear from them, they do all what is needed to make a difference. If you look at the motor industry, our own vice president controls every major brand you can think of, besides the chicken in Botswana, and also being the treasurer general of the... So we are very, very proud of Satarwa. When you talk of property, you've got Ghulam Hussain, who has property across the entire Africa, and he's the only one that is listed on the Botswana Stock Exchange. Harun Karim here also is a son of Malawi, had to go to London, from London to Dubai, and today he's a global property player. And these are all senior trustees of the WMO. So you can see how proud we are of the caliber of people that we have. Then you talk of charity. Who better than the gift of the givers? Another Memon, Imtiaz Suleiman. What he has done has inspired everybody and left a mark for our community that we can be all proud of. I could go on the whole day talking of the success stories of the Memons that have achieved, and we are very proud. When people talk, why Memon, why Muslim, I always tell them, I am a Memon, I'm a devoted Muslim, but I'm a very proud South African, and that cannot change. And that will always be there, and I don't have to apologize to anybody for being a Memon. And please forget it, we must respect our ethnicity, and if we don't safeguard it, our children will know where we come from. So that discussion of why Memon and Muslim should not be another discussion, because I've had it twice this morning. Going further, when you go and analyze this, you've got to now look at, if the Memons are so successful, what's on the flip side? And on the flip side is what you have to think twice. 60% of our population in the subcontinent doesn't earn $1 a day, not $1. They are in absolute poverty. All my fellow trustees will tell you that we have traveled the roads. We've seen how one family, 9 of them stay in one room, 4 sleep outside, 4 sleep inside. They don't know where the next meal is going to come from. And now you know why WMO was formed. We are blessed with the best business people in the world who have a heart of gold, and charity is their norm. There's no other discussion. But with it, our community has ensured that we have the best urologists, we have the best neurologists, we have the best cardiologists, we have the best educationists. Our Memon even runs the largest university in Africa, the Wits University, Mr. Adam Habib. And if you go in every field, you look at our own Yunus Suleiman, who's our treasurer, the past chairman of KPMG and sitting on all the boards. I have to call him sir now, you know, so we are really truly proud. So this is where WMO was born, to care for those that need it most. Are we wrong to care for our own? Absolutely not. As I was discussing earlier with our minister when we were talking of Colwards and Surtees and this and that, nobody is going to go out and look after our people. If we don't do it ourselves, nobody will care. That does not mean that our entire work is only for caring for us. There is absolutely no discussion of what we do for other communities. In Pakistan, where we have a wonderful institute, which is the Memon Industrial and Technical Institute, which is turning out up to 14,000 vocational jobs. Everybody cannot go to university. So we make them electricians, we make them plumbers, we give them computer literacy, we do all that. And in turn, I must inform you that out of the 70,000 students that we've turned out in 5 years, only 8% are Memon. The rest, 92% are others. So do not be fooled. We live by what we are and what our Quran tells us. We have to care for mankind. But charity starts at home, And we first have to look after those that we need most. And I appeal to you all, one and all, who are not members of WMO. The last 15 years has been an absolutely fantastic ride for all of us. Though we've worked hard, though we've seen pain, though we've seen what it is, we've truly enjoyed the ride because we've made differences. We have changed lives. We have created rehabilitation. We've created homes. We've educated people. And even today, 20 to 30,000 a year are being educated. Our own people that had nothing and didn't have $1 a day, today are the plumbers and electricians and that working in Dubai and sending money back home. So it is imperative that everybody here today, if you really have a heart and you really feel for your own and you really want to make a difference, be part of WMO. If you're not going to be part of WMO, the work of WMO will go on nevertheless. Allah's work never stops. If one doesn't, there's always somebody else that replaces him. But don't miss the fun, don't miss the joy, and don't miss the sawab that we get in running WMO. Thank you, Mr. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce a gentleman which needs absolutely no introduction because everybody in this house knows him. He was an absolute stalwart through the UDF days and through the first era. He was our first Minister of Trade and Industry. He was the longest running finance minister in this world, 13 years. Where he took our budget from a paltry 170 billion to almost $1 trillion when he retired. His job was not done. He then went and became the minister in the presidency and our national development plan. He was the chairman of that, and he has made sure that by 2030, this will be a different country. It gives me great honor, but before I do that, I want to acknowledge Maria. Maria has been an absolute stalwart in our struggle as well. And she also, from very humble beginnings, from the time she was working as a teller at F&B, was always in the struggle. You will all know that she was the Director General of Finance that did everything. You are not aware of it. Some days Trevor was off, he was sick, he was taking a walk, he was playing golf. Maria carried the cane. I can tell you that today. So she's been there thick and thin. We know it's a marriage made in heaven, Trevor, Maria. Anyway, Maria further, another secret I'm going to give you today, and Maria, please do not be annoyed with me. In 2002, she was honored by Mervyn King to be offered the post of Deputy President of the British Reserve Bank, which our then President Mbeki said, sorry, we need you more, you can't go. Today she would have been the President of the Reserve Bank of Britain. From there, she's done a remarkable job of turning our Transnet. She is now the CEO of EPSA, the First Lady on the Barclays board in London, a top executive on Richmond, and Maria, we're truly proud of you for what you have done and what you've achieved. Mr. Manuel, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Salibai. You are very, very generous. Assalamu alaikum. To all of you, it's a great privilege to be here. But now that I'm here, I should advise you that I've been set up. Because I am standing at a microphone between you and lunch. So I was cautioned to be brief so that because they say hungry people are rowdy people, and so you know, in the invitation here, let me acknowledge the president of the WMO, the leadership of the WMO, present, past and future. Solly, in inviting me here, had suggested I talk a little bit about politics in South Africa. Now, one of the things I learned in government is you can defy presidents, which is why I'm not in government anymore, but that's a long story. And so I don't want to look at South Africa. In fact, I want to step back and take a look at some of the trends, especially across the African continent. Because by looking elsewhere, we can reflect and learn about ourselves. There's a wonderful article in the City Press today written by my friend Mavuso Msimang, published under the rubric The Writing on the Wall. And he deals with something I didn't know, King Belshazzar, whose kingdom had failed, and there was this writing on the wall that said, Mene, mene, tekel, ufarsen. I'll come back to that in a moment. I like the fact that Mavuso could go back so far in history to the kingdom of Babylon and reflect on it for our purposes here, and so it's not a bad starting point. Across the African continent, 15 years ago, there were a number of heads of state who got together, and I think as Africans we were privileged because they got together and started looking at us as Africans and looked at the world and agreed that we must take a number of decisions to improve on the lot of all Africans. And there was a confluence in time of a great number of very important leaders. Just to run through, it included President Chissano in Mozambique, President Mkapa in Tanzania, Prime Minister Meles Zenawi in Ethiopia, President Bouteflika. Can people not hear? Thank you. President Bouteflika in Algeria, President Obasanjo in Nigeria, President Festus Mogae in Botswana, and our own President Mbeki. And what they set as a task was to change this image of African leaders as being corrupt, uninformed, and people who were more interested in themselves. In fact, one of the biggest caricatures of African leaders had just been removed from power in what is now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. That was Mobutu Sese Seko. And the stories about Mobutu abounded, and there's in fact a great movie that tells the story of his general behavior. He would take money from the people and build himself palaces. And he bought chateaus. He had one in Switzerland and one in the south of France. In the movie, it says he slept with so many women, including the wives of many of his ministers who knew about it. He even tried to launch a rocket. But more importantly, at one point the country was in dire straits. They needed to lend from the World Bank, and World Bank officials went to see him and said, President Mobutu, can't you lend Zaire some money? And he said, these people will never repay me. Of course, all of it was money that he had stolen from them in the first place. And so that was the caricature of what African leaders shouldn't be. And this grouping of leaders got together and said, we need to drive change across the continent so that we reposition each of our countries, reposition Africa together, reposition ourselves in the world. And so they set about changing a number of institutions. The Organization of African Unity was established in 1963, and these leaders decided to give it rebirth in the year 2000, so it was modern and focused in what it ought to do. They also said that we need to undertake certain projects because many of our countries are too small to do it on its own, and so if we want infrastructure and so on, then we need to look at life differently, and that was what gave rise to the new Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD for short. They said that part of what we need to do if we want the world to trust us is to hold the feet of each other to the fire so that we are accountable to each other and also to our people. And that gave rise to the African peer review mechanism. And the APRM is very clear about what countries must do, what leaders must do, and why they must do it. And from a central point, everybody would be judged. And the APRM was very clear when they met with us. They said, South Africa is at a stage of development which is different from Djibouti. Don't ask to be judged on the same standards as Djibouti. We need to build our own role models and set the benchmark continually higher for ourselves. And through those methods, we had a group of leaders at that point in time who did us proud and who sought to lift the quality of life of all people across the African continent. Well, as things are, leaders change. Electoral cycles make sure that presidents are rotated out. Sometimes the electorate changes government as well, and so what we have now is a very different group of leaders. But the obligations that those leaders spoke to, certainly here in South Africa, hasn't changed. You see, because we have a constitution that commits us to a different set of outcomes, and that constitution will always be there as our collective conscience. And it starts with the words, we the people of South Africa recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. And then it says, we therefore adopt this constitution as the supreme law of the Republic so as to heal the divisions of the past and establish the society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundations for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by law. Improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person, and build a united and democratic South Africa able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. What our constitution doesn't do is give us an option. Unfortunately, I think that what our constitution also has are institutions that were built to hold everybody to account. And so when on the 31st of March, the President of the, Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court, Judge Mogoeng, spoke on behalf of the 11 judges of the Constitutional Court to deliver a single consensus judgment. They spoke about this Constitution, the values that we hold dear, the commitments that we have made to ourselves and future generations, and where the failures are. In an ideal world, you shouldn't have the court tell us that. We should all be able to imbibe these values and ensure that our children learn it and their children learn it. And we all remain committed to these values, which includes equality before the law, a country that belongs to all who live in it, and then a commitment to ensure that we continually raise the living standards of all of our people and free the potential of each person. Now, if you haven't made an investment in people, you don't even begin to understand what their potential is. This is not something you do once. It's a continuous commitment that you have to make. And if you want to make this commitment, then you must be measured and judged by your people, not just through elections, but also in the way in which we perform. I'm saying that in our country, we don't have a choice about this. But when one looks around the continent, and in fact, slightly broader now, you see that this is not the behavior of leaders. You look at Burundi and you look at President Nkurunziza and you look at the commitment that he has displayed to rule continually, regardless of what he will take away by life, limb, and property from people. This week, the President of the Senate in Burundi even threatened another genocide like they had in 1993 and 1994. Or we can look at a country like Nigeria, which is going through a number of problems. You know, the President of the Senate in Nigeria has been charged with corruption, and he says, look, I'm not guilty, and he appeared in court with 65 lawyers. Virtually every senior counsel in Nigeria was part of his team. It took them 10 minutes to read the names of just his legal team into the record. And he says, I have nothing to fear. Well, actually, his name is one of those that appeared in the Panama Papers. Or you look at the former advisor to the previous president, Goodluck Jonathan, who is being charged with the corruption of just $2 billion, $2 billion, Mr. Sambo Dasuki. And because he was a security advisor, he rerouted money that was meant for the army to protect people from the terrorism that Boko Haram exercises, build peace between North and South in Nigeria, and ensure that Islam is recognized as a religion of peace and not what Boko Haram represents. He took $2 billion, stuck it in his pocket, and he's being charged for that. Because when systems go and people believe that there are no consequences, then you get these kinds of things that happen. Or you can look at somebody that Maria and I know well, the former governor of the central bank in Nigeria, Sanusi, remarkable central governor. Remarkable. I mean, in a league of his own. What he did for Nigeria is without peer. But of course, he asked the President Goodluck Jonathan to explain what happened in the oil account, $15 billion in the escrow account that nobody was wanting to talk about. And he was removed from office. He now is the Emir of the state of Kano. But a brilliant economist, brilliant mind, brilliant manager, taken out because of his brilliance. The key issue, I think, is whether we like it or not, the issue of leadership becomes important everywhere. I don't quite know why people want to lead countries. I mean, I look at this and we all watch television, we watch the primaries, and there's this man. And I shouldn't talk about hair because I don't have any, but Donald Trump, why does he think that he should be president of the United States? Why? Or in the light of what Solibai was talking about, Gujarat, I'd wondered for a time whether Modi could be the prime minister after the events of Gujarat a few years ago. And then when he's out there on the streets with a broom, you cut him a bit of slack, and then you can see that he doesn't really know why he wanted to be prime minister of India. I'm raising these issues because I think at a time like now, leadership is fundamentally important everywhere and regardless of what we do. And leaders can never make it on their own. Leaders need the led. We need checks and balances. We need systems of accountability. And we need to know that leaders must know when to go. I come back to the story of King Belshazzar in the kingdom of Babylon. And the writing on the wall, for which they needed a very wise man, was Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. And the gist of what he said, and I'm going to use my derived translation, is God has weighed your actions and found you wanting. God has numbered the days of your kingdom. Your kingdom will be divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. And so when Solly talks about the history of even the Memons, you will find some of those divisions that happened a long time ago. These things are important. We need to learn from history. We need to learn from what happens around ourselves. We need to be able to look each other in the eye and say, as Madiba did at his inauguration in May of 1994, never, never, and never again. And sometimes this calls for bold action. Sometimes it calls for unity, differently described, but we must know that leaders will never lead on their own and are incapable unless the led hold them accountable and hold their feet to the fire. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Soliba, you were so eloquent in your speech. You had the audience captivated. And I thought that when we have the best, let's get the best to acknowledge Mr. Trevor Manuel. So I'll call on Soliba to acknowledge Trevor Manuel. And then we will have a short awards session and lunch will be served thereafter. Soliba.
Thanks, Harunba. I think I have said enough about Trevor, and anything more said would just be more embarrassing. Because, I mean, even after politics, today he sits on all the international boards, whether it's SA Breweries, and the vice chairman of Old Mutual, he's with Swiss Re. He even was there when SA Breweries made this fantastic deal. So, Uncle Trevor, please come on. We'd like to honor you. Thank you. Could I please ask the Vice President of Africa, Mr. Harun Yusuf, come in to hand over this magnificent trophy to our Mr. Manuel. As I previously said, they always say behind every successful man, there is a successful woman. And Zora is very adamant. It's not behind, it's besides. So Maria, will you come on board? And Zora, please, for you to present it to Maria.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
You know, in 2001, when we got together in Dubai to form the WMO, we had the 5 founding members that instituted WMO, the late ARY and Abu Bakr Qasim and the 5 good men. We call them the 5 wise men. But then out of that came others that just set the pace. There was one gentleman that came, he became trustee on day 1. He headed up all the committees that were important. He told us how to walk, where to go, how to do it, and we blindly followed successfully. When ARY retired, there was absolute no discussion. The man to fill his shoes was Mr. Sattar Dada. Our vice president, if I have to read you his CV, it will take me a day and a half. But he's left me with a legacy which is very difficult to fill. So Satadba, would you come forward? We'd like to honor you today. And okay. And I'm going to ask our Secretary General of Africa, Mr. Harun Gatta, to present it to him. Yeah, no, I'm going to take one with you. Let me take one with you. At the same time, while this was happening in 2001, Satar was not the only one. We had another trustee that came there, also became a gentleman that came there, became trustee day one. And please do not forget, gentlemen, in those days, trustee was $100,000, but the rand was at 13, and I was pleading with Trevor what's going to happen. And he said, relax, it's coming back to 6, and he was right. But anyway, this gentleman has also set a pace where he's headed up most of the committees in WMO, taken up from the infancy and taken us across. He headed up Europe. He's done a great job with Dubai. And he is, again, a businessman that has set the pace. And if you look at some of the magazines that we have where we feature him, you will see he's an outstanding personality in business. He's a great philanthropist. And we are proud to have him as our chairman of the board of trustees. Mr. Harun Karim, please. At the same time, we also had a South African gentleman that was active from day one, a trustee, played a leading role in all the social committees and everything. When you see this Mammon on your table, he's part of that committee as well. He also ran Africa. I was proud in my tenure as the chairman of the board of trustees. He was the secretary of the board of trustees. I promise you, he did all the work and I took the credit, so I have to pay back today. Faisal Ba, we'd like to have you on board. You know, the most important thing in every society, whenever we as parents grow up, we always look at what our offspring is going to do. And we are very, very aware their offspring has to follow the legacy of what the parents have left and carry the name of the family, and that's it. So at WMO, we totally believe in the youth. We know these are the leaders of the future. We put our total trust in them. And we have a fantastic trustee as well, the ex-chairman of KPMG, Mr. Yunus Suleiman, who heads up that, and he's done a tremendous job. So I'll ask Dania Khanif, who is from the youth in Pakistan, to receive an award from Mr. Yunus Suleiman.
Can I ask my parents to come and receive the award on my behalf? Because I think more than me, it's my parents' hard work which has resulted in this. So can I have my mama? Dad?
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I panji gal me chunta ne ke moko sachyo khape. The e moko ayaj today where we got to celebrate these wonderful leaders. Thank you. Enjoy the lunch.
Ladies and gentlemen, lunch is being served and we will start the program after lunch. Thank you.